This 46-year-old woman grilled her 71-year-old mother with seasoning. In May of 2023, 46-year-old Candace Craig was confronted by her 71-year-old mother, Margaret Craig, for stealing money from her bank account. Margaret threatened to call the cops on her, and this threat is what triggered Candace's next move. Candace strangled her mother to death and left her to rot in her room. During that time, Candace's daughter Celia heard a scream, but Candace told her to stay away from her grandmother's room. The following day, Celia entered her grandmother's room, and that's when she found her body in a bin with a trash bag over her head. Candace told her that they needed to get rid of her body by either burning it, using acid, or chopping it up. Once they purchased grilling supplies and a can of gasoline at Home Depot, Candace tried to burn Margaret's body in the back of the house. However, neighbors noticed the fire and contacted the fire department. The next morning, Candace and Celia retrieved the remains from the fire and brought them inside once they were able to cool off. Then Candace bought a chainsaw and used it to dismember her mother's body in the basement. The only reason Celia was helping her mother was because she asked her to. On June 2nd, officers were sent to the home after a neighbor had reported Margaret as missing, and immediately they recognized the smell of human decomposition. They even saw blood and tissue on the floor near 3 white plastic trash bags. Officers looked in an open trash bag and it appeared to have brain matter inside. Investigators later discovered a chainsaw, cutting utensils, cleaning materials, and blood splattered throughout the basement. Candace and Celia were both arrested, but Celia ended up being released since she was cooperative with police, and Candace was sentenced to life in prison. This is why people are terrified to meet strangers online, even in broad daylight. 30-year-old Eliza Morales was from Downers Grove, Illinois, 5 months pregnant with her second child and a mother to a 2-year-old girl. Friends and family described her as a loving wife, a devoted mom, and someone who always put her family first. On January 24th of 2026, Eliza's husband had listed their pickup truck for sale on Facebook Marketplace. They eventually got a message from a 19-year-old guy named Nadas Ravukas, and he picked up the truck that same day. A few days later, on January 26, Nadas and Eliza agreed that he could come back to the home to pick up the bill of sale and so that he could swap license plates. When Nadas arrived to the home, Eliza was the only one home at that time, and when he knocked on the door, Eliza opened the door and she gave him a screwdriver so that he could switch the license plates. Nadas then went inside of the home, and that is when he stabbed Eliza more than 70 times in the head and the neck. Also, Eliza's elderly pit bull was also stabbed in the attack but was able to escape and survive. Once Eliza was deceased, Nadas used household chemicals and her stovetop to set her home on fire. Eventually, Nadas was taken into custody, and he stated the reason he did this was because he was very angry with the condition of the truck and decided to take his frustration out on Eliza. He claimed that during the attack, Eliza kept telling him to stop because she was pregnant, but he didn't. Nadas was arrested and charged with multiple felonies, denied bail, and is set to be back in court on February 18th. Loved ones held a vigil and funeral for Eliza, describing her as a very vibrant mom who had so much life left to live. Eliza leaves behind her husband and their 2-year-old daughter, and a GoFundMe page was set up to help the family during this horrible time.
There's a real case where a boy ran behind a school locker and vanished in front of witnesses. It happened during recess at an elementary school in the early 2000s. A group of kids were playing tag in the hallway while teachers were nearby. One of the kids got tagged and sprinted toward a row of lockers. Everyone watched him turn the corner behind them. And that's where the problem starts, because he never came out the other side. At first, the kids laughed, thinking he was hiding. Then a teacher checked behind the lockers. Nothing. No doors, no vents, no crawl space, just a solid wall. Security was called within minutes. The hallway was locked down. Janitors pulled lockers away from the wall. There was nowhere he could have gone. Search dogs were eventually brought in. They followed his scent straight to the lockers and then stopped, like he'd hit a dead end in reality itself. No evidence, no sounds, no camera malfunction, just a normal school day and a kid who literally stepped out of existence. Officials ruled it a runaway. Parents didn't believe it. Students never forgot. And here's the detail that messes people up. Several kids said when he ran behind the lockers, it looked like the hallway got quiet for a split second, like the sound dropped out, almost like reality blanked. And when it came back, he was gone. Stay weird.
He escaped the death penalty but still ended up dead, and you will not believe who his killer was. Honestly, not a lot shocks me with true crime anymore, but this one did. It was March 1986 in Augusta, Georgia. Alita Bunch was just 16 years old but had a bright future ahead of her. She was not only absolutely beautiful, she was also incredibly smart. She worked as a part-time model and really wanted to become a doctor when she was older. On the 4th of the month, she vanished out of the blue at a shopping centre. And bless her, she'd only popped in really quickly quickly after school that day because she wanted to pick up a birthday present for her mum. So it made no sense why she never came home that night. Witnesses saw her heading back to her car that evening, but then she seemingly vanished into thin air. Police immediately started scouring the area but had no luck, but they did manage to trace her bank cards, which were still being used. So obviously Alita's family were overjoyed. They were like, oh my god, maybe this means that she's still alive. Sadly, it wasn't Alita that was using the cards. Meanwhile, 17-year-old Alexander Williams had mysteriously started driving around in a blue Mustang. Now, this wasn't his car and nobody really knew where he'd found it. He told his mates, oh, I just happened to find it, and also magically in the car happened to be a girl's belongings and bank cards. He very generously offered to buy them a bunch of stuff with these bank cards, and they all went on a shopping spree. He wasn't just being generous out of the goodness of his heart. He wanted a favor. He was like, guys, I know I said that I kind of just found this car, but can you help me dispose of it? So they started getting very suspicious at this point and started quizzing him about where he really got the car. Alexander told his friends that he met a girl in the shopping centre, forced her into her car, and then drove off with her. Now, please guys, I've said this on a recent video, do not ever go to a second location. Chances are, if you're going to a second location, the thing that's going to happen to you there is not going to be good. Make as much noise as possible, as big of a scene as you can, just to get away in front of people. Now, sickeningly, Alexander said that they had S. This wasn't S, by the way, this was R. And he said because she kept making noises, he decided to shoot her. His friends were terrified because Alexander threatened them. He said, I did it once and you damn well better believe I'll do it again. Now, thankfully, the brave witnesses did actually go to the police, and 8 days after she vanished, Alita's body was found. She'd been shot 5 times and had been stripped and arred. Alexander apparently said to his friends that he felt absolutely nothing, no guilt, no remorse about what he'd done to her. And after a 4-day trial in 1986, he was sent to death row. And I don't know about you guys, I don't know how I feel about this, but because he was 17 at the time and was later diagnosed with schizophrenia, people were up in arms about him being given the death penalty. They didn't agree that we should be putting a teenager with mental health issues to death. And I mean, this bit does sound wild to me. He was forcibly medicated in prison to ensure that he was sane enough to kill. Everybody was arguing about this case. Some people were like, he's so young, he was abused as a child. Others were like, he's made an adult decision to take somebody else's life in the most disgusting way possible. But in February 2002, his death sentence was removed. He was changed to life without parole, and loads of people felt like this was the right thing. But less than a year later, Alexander was found dead in his prison cell. He'd taken his own life and was found with a shirt around his neck.
She closes the fridge and walks away like nothing happened. Security footage from a small apartment kitchen shows a young mom on her phone pacing between the counter and the refrigerator. She's distracted, laughing, scrolling, answering messages. In one quick motion, she opens the fridge, leans down, and places her baby inside almost automatically, then shuts the door and keeps talking like it's just another normal second. Minutes pass, the room is quiet except for her voice. The baby isn't in the crib, isn't on the couch, but she doesn't notice. When the father walks in, he doesn't react at first either. He sits down confused, asking casually where the baby is. She shrugs, still glued to her call. Then something shifts. The father starts checking the room, his movements get faster, he calls the baby's name, no answer. He grabs the phone from her hand, panic finally breaks through her blank expression. They search everywhere, the air feels heavy, and then a faint cry from the refrigerator. He yanks the door open, frozen in shock for half a second, then pulls the baby out.
Do you notice something odd about this photo? This was Fiona Pender's apartment until she vanished without a trace. And this case only gets creepier. It was summer 1996 in County Offaly. Fiona Pender was a beautiful Irish woman who actually had had a really tragic loss just the year prior. She was really close with both of her brothers, and suddenly one day out of the blue, one of her brothers was tragically killed in a motorbike accident. Obviously it was heartbreaking for the entire family, but Fiona was like, do you know what? I don't want to mope around. I want to make my brother proud. She was starting a family of her own with her boyfriend John Thompson in a flat in Church Street, Tullamore. Now, the pair were about to welcome a brand new baby into the family, and something that Fiona would regularly do because she was so excited to give birth would be to go to little shops and find cute little baby outfits that she could buy in preparation of her new arrival. She would buy these outfits from the money that she earned from being a hairdresser, and that was actually exactly what she was doing right before she vanished. On the 22nd of August, she'd gone with her mum to do a little bit of baby clothes shopping in the local area. area. But when she kissed her mum goodbye on her doorstep that night, her mum had no idea she would never see her daughter alive again. Now, bear in mind, this mum had just lost her son the year prior, and now her 25-year-old daughter, who was 7 months pregnant, vanished into thin air. Now, Fiona lived with John, like I said, and John would tell the police later that night he saw Fiona as normal, and he even saw her the next morning when he got up and left the house at around 6 to go to his family farm. He said all was fine when he left, and he couldn't think of anywhere she would have gone. But Fiona didn't contact anyone that whole day, and her blinds in her flat remained down. So when her family walked by, they thought it was really odd that Fiona would be inside with the blinds down. They knocked the door and got no answer, so they got the police involved, who showed up and tried the door as well, and they actually had to break down the door to get inside. And when they got in there, it was eerily silent. It was clean and tidy, and a chair just sat empty in the corner of the room. And honestly, they found not one single clue as to where she could have gone. Days went by, and then weeks, and then months. I can't imagine the turmoil that poor family would have been feeling. Like, they surely must have been thinking, the baby is due by now. Like, the baby should have been born. Then something happened that shook them to the core. In April 1997, John, his dad, and his 3 sisters were arrested. It looked like John was a suspect. And I mean, us guys, we all know by now that usually it is the first person that the police look at, the partner. Especially when a woman is pregnant. And some really disturbing rumors started circulating in the local area about what witnesses said that they'd seen. They said 2 men near the flat were loading a, quote, large bulky item wrapped in carpet, end quote, into a 4x4. And who owned a 4x4? John Thompson. Now, somebody else also added weight to this story because they said they saw a 4x4 around 20 miles away from the flat, driving really erratically that evening. But John and his family ended up being released without charge after being questioned. And years rumbled on until another tragedy. Fiona's remaining brother, bless him, went to his family home one day, hoping to see his dad, only to find him in the property, dead. He'd taken his own life. Living without his daughter was just too horrific to bear. But the family was about to face another blow. In summer 2008, a small cross was found in Monnicknew Woods. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And a cross on its own obviously wouldn't have been weird. Except this one read, Fiona Pender, buried here August the 22nd, 1996. Now, nobody knows if this was a hoax. The police dug around the area and couldn't find a single thing. But the story doesn't end there. John Thompson continued his life, relocating to Canada in 2012, but some very disturbing things came to light when he got remarried. In 2014, he was charged with SA and making death threats to his wife. Disturbing explicit videos were also found on his laptop of him and his wife. Now, she said in these videos she was totally out of it. She had no memory of engaging in these activities at all, and she suspected that her husband had D'd her and then R'd her and filmed it. She even told police that he threatened her once, "You know I've done it before, they'll never find you, you'll end up like her." But the most horrific part of all is John walked free from court. The judge claimed that it couldn't be determined that he'd actually committed non-consensual acts, and the case was dropped. She divorced him, bless her, and to this day, Fiona's body has never been found.
I cried when I heard this story, both sad and happy tears, and I can almost guarantee you that you're gonna cry as well. This case is so heavy, trigger warning, I'm about to say why. The dad murdered his mom and his sister right in front of him and then turned against him. Luckily, little Ronnie survived, but the dad would go on to choose to represent himself in court, and he would be the one to cross-examine his own son, which should be illegal. With all that being said, have to give my usual disclaimer, this case does involve a child. It's also incredibly graphic and disturbing and heartbreaking to listen to, so if you think that listening to this is going to harm your mental health in any way, shape, or form, I totally understand. Skip this video and I will see you in my next one. Take care of yourselves. I mean it. I love you. On March 18th of 2018, authorities received a 911 call, and on the call, you can clearly hear that something is very wrong. Someone is hurt. You hear a woman say, "God help me, please. Jesus help me. I am shot." People are yelling. The operator can't really seem to make out exactly what's going on before the call disconnects. And then another 911 call comes in, but this time it's a man's voice. The call is coming from the same house, and
and you can hear the man saying, quote, "I've just been attacked by some white demons," end quote. More things can be heard on the call, but it's mostly just sound and chaos until that call disconnects. Officers and paramedics are dispatched to the house, and when they get there, they see a woman on the ground, very badly injured. She's lying unconscious in the front yard. She had a gaping wound to her arm. She had missing teeth. Her face was barely recognizable. Her injuries were so far, they were too far gone. She could not be saved, and she was pronounced dead at the scene. And then a tall man emerged from the house that was on fire, mind you, Ronnie O'Neill III. We're going to be referring to him as O'Neill for the remainder of this video. It does not take long for authorities to figure out what happened inside of that house that night in March. O'Neill had not only brutally murdered the mother of his children, which was the woman lying on the front yard, 33-year-old Kenyatta, but he had also murdered his 9-year-old special needs daughter, Ronivia. She would be found inside of that house. And O'Neill had then gone after his 8-year-old son, Ronnie O'Neill IV. Yes, they're both named Ronnie O'Neill, don't get confused. O'Neill had murdered his entire family, then grabbed a gasoline can, poured that out everywhere, including on the bodies of his 2 children, and then set his house on fire. But what he did not know yet, and what he was about to find out within minutes of authorities arriving at the scene while he was sitting in the back of the police car after being detained, was that little Ronnie had made it out. The 8-year-old little boy had survived the attack by a miracle, and with officers and paramedics there, he stumbled out of the house, walked out of the house, and collapsed onto the ground. His injuries were so bad, specifically the ones to his stomach, that his intestines were falling out of his body. The little boy was tightly holding onto his stomach as tight as he could because he was literally holding his intestines in, preventing them from falling out. He was airlifted to a Tampa hospital where he would undergo a lot of treatment for his many injuries. At first, doctors thought there was absolutely no way that Ronnie would have made it through the night. But once he was taken care of, little Ronnie would be the only surviving witness able to tell detectives what exactly happened that night. After O'Neill had been detained and was sitting inside of the police car, he referred to his murder victim Kenyatta by calling her the devil and referred to his own children as the devil's kids. He was taken and booked into jail. So how did we get to this point? I'll tell you, but we have to backtrack a little bit. 33-year-old Kenyatta and O'Neill were once together. They had been in a relationship at one point, obviously had 2 children together, little Ronnie and his older sister, Ronivia. They broke up in 2012 and went their separate ways. Kenyatta kept the kids. O'Neill was ordered to pay child support, though he very quickly fell behind on those payments. He was not a good guy for a lot of reasons, but the 2 of them were completely separated. O'Neill even met another woman, got into a relationship with her, had a kid with her. Meanwhile, Kenyatta, Ronivia, and little Ronnie all lived together, and they were very happy. Kenyatta was the best mom to her children. She loved and adored them more than anything in this world, and they loved her just as much back. Literally, the first thing that anyone says when you bring up Kenyatta is how good of a mom she was. She loved being a mom. She loved spending time with her children. They were always together, going to church, going to the movies, going to the park. And I mentioned Ronivia, the little girl being special needs. She was born a preemie, very, very, very premature, and she went through a lot of health complications because of that, also meaning that she needed extra care and attention as she was growing up. She was nonverbal. Ronnie and Kenyatta had learned sign language to be able to communicate with her better. And although things at times were not easy, they more than made it work. Kenyatta would have done anything for her. She would have done anything for either of her children, and it's only that much more sad and heartbreaking knowing and understanding how good the family was. That house was full of life and love until O'Neill came back into the picture. In 2017, O'Neill was very badly injured in a drive-by shooting. He almost did not recover from the injuries that he sustained, but he did, and afterwards he needed help being taken care of. Nobody in his life wanted to help him, nobody that knew him. He literally could not find a single person who was willing to help him, to take care of him, to be there for him. Not a single person in his entire life, probably because he was an awful human being. But out of the goodness of her heart, Kenyatta offered to help him, and from my understanding, she was 0% interested in rekindling their relationship at all. She did not care to be romantically involved with him in any way, shape, or form again. She was literally just like, okay, fine, you have nowhere to go. You are the father of my children. I guess you can stay at our house while you get back on your own 2 feet, and then you'll leave, okay? Whatever. So O'Neill moves in with the 3 of them, and only 5 months later, the murders occurred. That kind of gives you an idea as far as the dynamic inside of the household goes. Now, as far as to what exactly happened for O'Neill to want to murder his entire family, well, this is his version of events according to what he told authority. After his arrest, O'Neill told investigators that earlier that night, him and Kenyatta had gone into a pretty bad argument. The argument escalated to the point that it got physical because of Kenyatta. This is what O'Neill is telling authorities. He was saying that she was the one who started everything pretty much. He was claiming self-defense like an idiot, as if anyone who saw that crime scene would believe him. But he says that he was scared of his life because he thought that Kenyatta was going to kill him, and so, quote, I killed her first, end quote. It was clear that he was lying. He was just full of shit. And investigators were only further able to confirm that after 8-year-old little Ronnie was stable enough to tell his version of events and what he saw that night. According to little Ronnie, he remembers his mom and dad getting into an argument, which I guess wasn't uncommon. They argued quite often, which is probably the reason as to why they broke up in the first place. Ronnie remembers that in the middle of that argument, his mom ran away from O'Neill. She was scared of him. She ran into a bedroom and hid herself in a closet, locking herself in the closet to hide from him. And then his dad got a hold of a shotgun. He had pulled Kenyatta out of the closet and hit her in the head with it, and then he began chasing her around the entire house, eventually out into the front yard. Ronnie stayed inside, so he didn't see exactly what happened outside, but we know that outside O'Neill had beaten and shot Kenyatta until she was unconscious. And then O'Neill walked back into the house alone. He grabbed an axe and turned his attention to his daughter, Ronivia, who was in her bedroom just sitting on her bed. He dragged her out of bed and into the hallway. Little Ronnie this entire time was just standing there, frozen in fear, witnessing all of this happening, when O'Neill grabbed the axe and swung it with as much force as possible, ending Ronivia's life right in front of his 8-year-old son. O'Neill then grabbed the gasoline can and poured it everywhere, all over Ronivia, all over the floors and walls of the house, including all over Ronnie himself. O'Neill then lit a match and threw it on top of little Ronnie, but he was able to break free and he ran away from his dad. However, O'Neill would catch up to him and he would grab him, this time with a kitchen knife in hand, and he used that all over Ronnie, leaving him with an endless amount of injuries all over him and specifically all over his stomach. And again, we know that those injuries were so bad that eventually when Ronnie did stand up, he literally had to hold himself together to prevent his insides from coming out. Then O'Neill grabbed another match and used that, lighting fire to the entire house and everyone in it. His entire version of events, Ronnie had to retell in court when he was now 11 years old, when O'Neill's trial finally took place, and O'Neill had decided to represent himself in court. Not only was he a pure evil man, but he also had an ego the size of the entire earth. Of course, he was facing very serious charges, but for some reason he pled not guilty, and he really thought in his little tiny pea-sized brain that he was going to get away with this. He really thought that he would be able to argue his case in court, still holding on to the self-defense claim, and he really thought that he was going to get out of this. But representing himself meant that he would be the person questioning witnesses, and the sole surviving witness was his now 11-year-old son. Thankfully, Ronnie did not have to see his father face to face. He joined the courtroom virtually, but he was still questioned by O'Neill, which literally to me, I'm like, why is that not illegal? But Ronnie retold the story as he remembered it. O'Neill asking him, "Did I hurt you that night?" Ronnie answered, "Yes." O'Neill asked him, "How did I hurt you?" Ronnie answered, "You stabbed me." During the cross-examination, O'Neill tried to point out inconsistent statements that his son had said, trying his best to paint out his little son to sound like a liar, but the jury was not having any of it. You could see the trauma in little Ronnie's eyes. It was devastating. Ultimately, in June of 2021, O'Neill was found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted first-degree murder, 2 counts of aggravated 1 count of arson, and 1 count of resisting a law enforcement officer. A state attorney describing the murders, quote, "among the most cruel and vicious our community has ever seen," end quote. He was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus 90 years. He is currently serving his sentence in Florida. Now, as far as little Ronnie goes, for a little bit of a happy ending, after that tragic night in March of 2018, 8-year-old little Ronnie laid in a hospital bed, burned and wounded, not expected to survive. A detective by the name of Mike Blair had responded to the horrific crime scene and had learned that there was one surviving witness, the only one who had survived. And he visited Ronnie in the hospital, also later recalling that there was, quote, "no expectation Ronnie would live," end quote. But seeing Ronnie in the state that he was in pulled at his heartstrings, as it would for anyone, but especially knowing that Ronnie would now just be on his own. After he recovered, he really had no family to go back to. So Mike spent a lot of time visiting Ronnie in the hospital. He would hang out with him, he would talk to him, he would listen to his stories that he had to tell about his mother and his sister, and he continued showing up for Ronnie just to be there, to be a person to keep him company. On one of those nights when Mike Blair was getting ready to head out for the night, little Ronnie grabbed his hand and asked him, quote, "could you watch a movie with me," end quote. That night, Mike was supposed to go meet up with his wife for date night, but he literally just couldn't leave Ronnie. He couldn't say no to him. So instead, he invited his wife with him to the hospital, and all 3 of them, Mike, his wife, and Ronnie, watched a movie together. That night built such a strong bond between all of them, and then Mike's wife then began being a frequent visitor in the hospital to spend time with Ronnie. Eventually, when Ronnie was healed and healthy again, he was placed into the foster care system. But Mike Blair told them about this relationship that he had built with Ronnie, not only him, but also his wife, and he said to let him know if anything happens, or if he needs anything, or if he needs help with Ronnie at all, all. He told them to call him. So Ronnie was taken into foster care. He was placed with a foster care family. I actually think he was placed in a few different ones, but it really wasn't working out. So then they called Mike Blair saying, hey, we're trying to put Ronnie with a family. We're trying to find him a family, but he's just really having a hard time settling. Do you know anyone who would take him in? And without hesitation, Mike said, bring him to me. I will take him. He didn't ask his wife. He didn't ask his children. He didn't ask anyone at all because he knew that his family would be more than happy to welcome little Ronnie. So on the phone, no questions asked, he said, I will take him. Bring him to me. Mike and his wife welcomed Ronnie into their house with open arms, introduced him to all 5 of their children, and made him feel cared for from the moment that he stepped into their house. They took such good care of him, helping him adjust, taking him to all of his doctor's appointments, feeding him, playing with him, paying attention to him, being a family for him. And then in November of 2019, Ronnie was officially adopted and he changed his name to Ronnie Blair, joining a loving family of 8. Today, little Ronnie is thriving. I literally have goosebumps again, but he has more than expressed his gratitude towards the Blair family, who is now his family. He's also adopted a new little saying that he came up with his new family that he will repeat to himself in times of stress. It goes, quote, I am safe, I am loved, and I am part of this family, end quote. And about his new family, he's also said, quote, they are really nice people. They are the best moms and dads, and they really take care of me. There is no one else better than them, end quote. I cried when I first heard that because after such a traumatizing, horrific event, it warms my heart to know that little Ronnie is now with people who love him and care him and truly have his best interest at heart. Thank God for the Blair family. Anyway, that is all I have for this video. Thank you for spending time with me today and listening to little Ronnie's story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
I could tell what was going to happen to this couple just by looking at this photo. It was the middle of summer in Aberdeen in 1978 when a body was found in a ground floor flat. It was a absolutely horrifying scene, a bloodbath. This young woman lay there with over 20 injuries to her head and face. This was no accident. Somebody had wanted her dead. She was Brenda Page, a ray of sunshine to everybody who knew her. She was only 32, but she was already so successful, incredibly intelligent. She actually had a PhD in genetics. It was while studying in Glasgow that she'd actually met her future husband, Christopher Harrison. And it didn't take long for the couple to make things official and tie the knot in 1972. But there was trouble in paradise. When Brenda chatted to her friends and family, she was like, I'm just not happy. She was like, I'm constantly treading on eggshells. I feel like he's volatile. He's never happy no matter what I do. And she started opening up more and more to her family and friends and eventually confessed that he'd actually been physically violent to her. Her loved ones were super supportive. They did everything that you would want them to do. They really encouraged her to be on her own, leave him, get out of the relationship, do what's best for you. So after 4 years of hell in this volatile relationship, she decided to put herself first and she filed for divorce. But it wasn't easy. I mean, divorces are expensive and it was incredibly difficult for Brenda to just start a new life. She was now having to pay for everything on her own. Even though she was a doctor, she was still struggling. So she decided to get a second job for a bit of extra cash as an escort. And her big sister was a bit worried, as you would be. She was like, I don't want you to be in any dangerous situations. But Brenda was like, don't be so old-fashioned. I actually found this job in the newspaper. Like, it's all above board. And she was finally able to be free and do nice things and go to nice places again. But when her body was found on the blood-soaked mattress, the community was devastated. Her poor neighbour, Dr. Douglas, who knew her really well, was actually asked to identify her body, and he was totally traumatized by the whole thing. He said, I was absolutely horrified, and it stayed with him for his entire life. Now, when police got there, they said that the killer must have got in by forcing a window open, and the really creepy part is that the killer may have actually lay in wait inside the apartment until she got home. This is honestly my absolute worst nightmare. So was it a random stranger who killed her, somebody she met via the escort agency, or the violent ex-husband? Well, infuriatingly, we wouldn't find out for over 30 years. Although the police did their best, they collected over 200 statements. They sent divers into the river to try and find maybe a discarded murder weapon somewhere. They put posters everywhere. Everything came to a dead end. Christopher the ex was originally questioned pretty early on, but there was barely any DNA technology back then and he just denied everything. Till March 2020. And honestly, I don't know, maybe somebody's watching this that thinks that they've gotten away with a crime, but let me tell you, the clock is always ticking. It's only a matter of time before you get found out. Police announced a 79-year-old man had been arrested and 800 pieces of evidence had been collected. And who was that 79-year-old man, you ask? It was Christopher. At his trial, they revealed sickeningly that his liquid, if you know what I mean, was found at the crime scene, and a witness actually ended up testifying that Christopher had told them he had intentions to kill Brenda. Like, I feel like that's probably a piece of information that you should have come forward with a lot sooner. Handwritten letters were also found from Christopher to Brenda admitting that he was violent towards her and that she was scared of him, which totally contradicted everything he said in the trial about them having a perfect marriage. I guess one of the nails in the coffin for Christopher in terms of this evidence was that flakes of green paint were found at the crime scene that matched the paint inside Christopher's car. Finally, aged 82, he was found guilty and given life, but loads of people are arguing like that's actually too late. Do you guys think this is too late? Is it ever too late to get justice? Because I guess he has been free for like the best years of his life.
Do you recognize the name Vanessa Guillen? Because if you don't, and if you're anything like me, after listening to this video, you're not going to be able to forget her name. All the different emotions that I experienced while prepping for this video, just a warning, this is not going to be easy to listen to, but I do think it's so important to tell her story. Vanessa Guillen was born in Houston, Texas, into a family that understood sacrifice. Her parents had made the move from a small farm town in Mexico to America in hopes of finding better opportunities. They ended up settling down in Southeast Houston, and it was there that they raised 6 children in a tight-knit home filled with so much love. They were a very close family, and something about Vanessa is that she knew what she wanted to do with her life from the moment that she was only 12 years old. She had always been drawn to the military. Her mother, Gloria, remembers when Vanessa was so little playing around with her brother's toys, just dreaming of the day that she would get to wear a uniform. And the fact that the Guillen family had a history of military service, not only in Mexico, but also in the States, I do think that played a big part in it because Vanessa grew up being familiar with it. Of course, as a mom, Gloria had her reservations. Call it a mother's intuition, but she had a gut feeling that Vanessa would eventually want to enlist, and for some reason, she just did not feel good about it. Yet, the one thing that she was going to do always was support her children, support her daughter, and that she did. When Vanessa attended high school in Houston, kind of her entire life, honestly, she was a very active person, whether it was being at the gym, playing soccer, running cross country. She loved exercise, and she was such a good role model for her sisters. She would always tell them to grow up and be strong like her. She was always doing something, and when she graduated high school in 2018, just a few days after turning 18 years old, she did what she had always dreamed of doing. She enlisted in the United States Army. When she completed her basic training, she was stationed in Fort Hood in Killeen, Texas, which was amazing because it was within driving distance to her family's house. From where she was stationed to her family's house, it would have been around a 3-hour drive, which was so nice because, again, she was such a family person. Every weekend, Vanessa would drive home to spend time with her family, and every single weekend, they were always just as excited to see her. Her mother said that the first time that Vanessa came home from base, she was absolutely glowing, so happy that she was finally following through on her dreams. The joy was literally radiating off of her. You could see it from miles away. It was so present. So Vanessa's role within the army was small arms and artillery repairer. I think that's how you say it. In other words, she was in a unit with hundreds of other soldiers. Fort Hood is one of the largest military bases in the world, and her job was to take apart, troubleshoot, repair, and reassemble weapons. It's very much a technical job that requires a lot of precision and a lot of skill. Think of it sort of being like a mechanic, but instead of cars, it's weapons. It required a very precise set of skills, but Vanessa had them and she excelled at them. She quickly rose to the rank of private first class, and according to her family, she was over the moon about everything. So there are rankings within the military, right? And I had to look these up for this video. I don't know anything about the military. I didn't prior to this video, so if I get anything wrong, I'm so sorry, please correct me. So the higher ranking that you have, the more power you have, for a lack of a better word, the more respect that you have. And the progression for junior enlisted soldiers goes like this. This isn't officers, by the way, it's ranking for enlisted soldiers. Officers are different, I'm pretty sure. But from lowest to highest, Private E1 would be like a new recruit. Private E2 would be after basic training. Private First Class E3, often called PFC, means that you have experience or prior military training. Specialist E4, also called SPC, is next, and they can manage soldiers that are lower ranks than them. then it's Sergeant E5, and that's a first leadership position. Sorry if that was confusing, but just to give you an idea of where Vanessa was at. But she was happy with her new life, happy with her new job, everything that she was doing, everything she was learning. It was all very exciting until it wasn't. And her family members were the first people to notice that something was wrong. They were all used to such a happy, outgoing Vanessa, someone so confident, strong, and sure of herself, but the Vanessa that they were seeing was different. She began to look ill almost. She was getting thinner. She didn't want to eat. She had less energy. Her mom said that she could just tell that her face looked sad. They would ask her if she was doing okay, and Vanessa would just say, "Yeah, Mom, I'm okay, I promise." One day, she left the base, she drove all the way home, walked into a bedroom where her sister was, and she closed the door and just broke down. She just started crying. She looked absolutely broken, and she told her sister that she didn't like it in Fort Hood and that she hoped one day she would understand why. In March of 2020, Vanessa got engaged, and she was so happy. Her and her fiance had met at a party. They had spent the entire night together dancing, and he knew from the moment that he laid eyes on her that she was the one. His family loved her, her family loved him. Everyone was so happy for them, and after the engagement, which happened in mid-March, there was like a sort of calmness that returned back into Vanessa. Like a sense of safety almost, because she was gonna get to spend the rest of her life with the love of her life. By April of 2020, the following month, she was 20 years old and working as a private first class, close to earning the rank of a specialist. She had her entire life ahead of her. But then on April 22nd of 2020, she disappeared. Vanessa always responded to her family's phone calls and texts. Maybe not right on the spot if she was busy doing something, but she would always make sure to get back to them when she could. But that Wednesday, she wasn't responding to anyone. During the day, her sister called, her mom called. She didn't answer, which is okay because she was at Fort Hood working. But when she didn't answer the calls, text messages follows. Her family assuming that if she didn't have time to talk on the phone, she at the very least would text her sister to let her know that she was busy and she would get back to her when she could. But she also wasn't responding to anyone's text messages. Around 8 p.m. that night, one of her sisters calls the base to see if they've seen Vanessa, and they say that they haven't seen her since around lunchtime. They tell her that she had an assignment for the day, and the last they knew, she went off to complete that task, but she never came back. And her sister is on the phone thinking, it's fully past 8 p.m. now and not a single person from the base has bothered to look for her. Vanessa's sister, her fiance, her mom, and her dad sit down together back at their house, all at the dinner table. They all talk to each other about the last call or text that they received from Vanessa, and none of them had heard from her. That's when her sister says, "I just called the base and they're saying that they don't know where she is." But how does someone disappear in a military base? It was weird, it was odd, and the feeling in their gut was not a good one. As soon as they realized that no one had heard from her, it was like all of her immediate family members and her fiance locked into the state of mind of, she is not going to be a missing person. She went to go work at the base. She never left. She has to be at the base. I don't care what you do. Shut down the base if you have to. We are going to find Vanessa. There was no reality for them in which they were going to accept that Vanessa was gone. So the looking for her to find her began. That same night, Vanessa's sister and her fiance got in the car and made the drive to Fort Hood. They got there at 3 a.m, but they were just told to leave and come back tomorrow. The entire night, her sister continued to text Vanessa's phone saying, "Vanessa, hello," and then she sent her a text message that read, "I'm going to find you, I promise." The following day, on April 23rd, the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division, also referred to as the CID, was notified that Vanessa was missing. Her keys, her wallet, her ID were all found in the arms room where she had been working the day before. Her car was also still on base, but her phone, nowhere to be found. It was also confusing because statements of when and where Vanessa was seen the last time on base were not consistent with each other. On April 24th, Fort Hood Military Police issued a BOLO, a be on the lookout order, to law enforcement agencies in Bell County. April 27th, CID offered a reward up to $15,000 for information leading to Vanessa's whereabouts. And the entire time, in the days following her disappearance, her family was not backing down. Her little sister, the videos of her talking about Vanessa are so sad, but she was just not willing. She was so confused, not understanding how Vanessa could go to work and then disappear on a military base. Her mom was desperate, demanding that they still search every single corner, every single building, every single crevice of that army base until they found her daughter. Her other sister and her fiance were taking matters into their own hands because it was clear from day one that they were going to need to. They were printing out posters with Vanessa's name, her face, leaving them at gas stations, metro stations, surrounding stores and shops, leaving posters with Vanessa's face on them. They wanted every single person possible to look at Vanessa's face and to be on the lookout. They were standing outside with pictures of her face, saying her name week after week after week. Her entire family continuing to pray together over and over, day by day, not giving up. Starting Facebook pages, posting on social media, hashtag Vanessa Guillen. They were doing everything. And it felt like the Fort Hood Military Police and the CID were not communicating properly with each other as they should have been. But what it felt like was that there seemed to be no real concerns that something happened to Vanessa outside of the base, because all signs were pointing to the fact that she never left. So the only other option would be that she disappeared at the base and that something happened to her, or that someone did something to her on base. And her mom was the person that had that feeling from day one. She felt so strongly about the fact that someone on the inside had either done something or at the very least knew something, and she felt that way because of a conversation that she had had with Vanessa. When she hadn't been acting like herself, her mother sat her down at the kitchen table, just the two of them, and her mom asked her to tell her what was going on. After a little bit, Vanessa agreed to tell her mom, but she warns her and tells her that what she's about to tell her is not going to be easy to listen to. Vanessa Guillen was being at Fort Hood, and she was afraid to report it. There was a sergeant, a specialist, and or multiple men that were not only creating an uncomfortable environment for Vanessa at Fort Hood, but an unsafe one, stalking her, watching her during private moments like when she was taking a shower in the field after doing exercises. She was so afraid and so uncomfortable, but she was even more scared to report it. When she told her mom about everything that was going on, she told her that she couldn't report it because she said that she had seen other girls and other women going through similar situations, and in their case, they reported it and they were ignored. No one believed them. Specialist Aaron David Robinson was 20 years old. He was from Illinois, specifically the Chicago suburbs, and he joined the Army in October of 2017, training as a 12B combat engineer. By April of 2020, he was working as an armorer, doing the same thing that Vanessa did. However, he was a specialist, and even though he was not Vanessa's direct supervisor, nor was he in her chain of command from my understanding, he was a specialist and he had been at Fort Hood longer, meaning that gave him a higher ranking than Vanessa. And what investigators would later piece together was that on the morning of April 22nd, the day that Vanessa disappeared, she had been completing her assignments, her tasks in the arms room where Aaron Robinson also happened to be. So let's back up for a second and talk about the entire timeline of that day. Around 10 a.m. on the 22nd, Vanessa arrived for her workday, inspecting and processing broken equipment for turn-in. She had a second task that morning, validating a serial number on a machine in a different arms room located in a nearby building. That arms room was occupied by Aaron Robinson. At approximately 10:15 a.m., Vanessa left her arms room and walked over to Aaron's. At 11:13 a.m., Aaron Robinson closes his arms room, and Vanessa would never be seen alive again. The soldier who had given Vanessa the task to validate that serial number was expecting her to go to Aaron's room, validate it, and then return back to hers. It was supposed to take her 5 minutes, but she didn't return back to her room. And when that soldier texted her around 11:05 to ask if she was coming back, she didn't respond, and her things, her personal belongings, were found in her arms room, meaning that she never went back to get them. So all of that points to a very high possibility that Aaron Robinson was the last person to see Vanessa Guillen alive. So when Vanessa's friends at the base figure out that no one had seen her, they started asking around to see who was the last person to see her, who was she working with last. They find out it was Aaron Robinson. Aaron Robinson is asked about her, and to her friends, which were two other men that she was close to, he says, "Oh yeah, I saw her in my arms room, but I didn't really talk to her. I just did what I had to do and then I left. No clue where she went or what she did after that." And then he's asked about it by the CID, and to them he says, "Oh yeah, I did see her in my arms room. I talked to her for a little bit, then I left, and I drove back to my house off base to spend the night with my girlfriend." So this guy has a girlfriend, 22-year-old Cecily Aguilar. They asked the girlfriend to confirm his alibi, and she says, yeah, he came home from work and we spent the night together. After Vanessa's mom notified authorities about the allegations, an investigation was allegedly opened into Aaron Robinson to see if he was the person that Vanessa had been referring to when she told her mom. The result to that was, quote, "The investigating officer found no credible evidence to conclude Aaron Robinson and Vanessa Guillen, or that they had any relationship outside of their work setting," end quote. So whoever Vanessa was referring to when she opened up to her mom is still unclear. Regardless, Aaron at the end of the day was still the last person known to have been with her. So investigators began talking to witnesses, asking if anyone may have seen Vanessa walk out of the arms room or if they had seen Aaron doing anything out of character the day that she disappeared. And then they hear from two witnesses that same day, the 22nd, the day that she disappeared, they saw Aaron Robinson hauling a large storage case on wheels. It's called a tough box. It kind of looks a little bit like a dumpster, but small and on wheels. And they remember seeing him pull this around because it appeared to be very heavy. At some point when his shift ended, Aaron Robinson loaded up that tough box into his car, drove away from Fort Hood. A tough box, by the way, was big enough to fit a body. He went home, got home, and according to him, just spent time with his girlfriend. Vanessa's family was losing faith in the Army's investigation, and on June 10th, at a press conference, they dropped the bombshell, and everyone watching learned about the fact that Vanessa had been Her family was extremely frustrated by the lack of progress, and it was their belief that they were just simply not receiving the full story from investigators in regards to Vanessa and everything that they knew. Vanessa's story was all over the media now, and I assumed that investigators felt even more pressure to solve this case, as they should have. 58 days into her disappearance, skeletal remains were found, but they were not Vanessa's. They were the remains of Gregory Morales, a soldier that had gone missing back in 2019, but his family had been told that Gregory had left base on his own accord, and they never received any more information about him really from them on. They had no closure. They never figured out what happened to him. No justice, nothing. And that, as you can imagine, only made the investigation progress from the army in regards to looking into missing people look even worse. It gave off that they were not experienced, they were not organized, and they had an extreme lack of concern and attention when things like these happened. A missing person should be the highest of priorities to anyone, but it felt like that was not the case. Not in Gregory's case, not in Vanessa's case. It wasn't until investigators re-interviewed Cecily, Aaron's girlfriend, that they would get answers into what really happened, because she broke and she finally said what she had known all along. Cecily told police that Aaron Robinson had confessed to her that he was the person responsible for Vanessa's disappearance. It turns out that the day that she disappeared, when she was in his arms room, Vanessa had seen Aaron's lock screen on his phone. His lock screen was a picture of Cecily. Cecily was legally married to another soldier on that base. She was the estranged wife to another soldier. They had separated, they were living apart, but still, she was still married to him, and Aaron knew him. In fact, Aaron used to be their roommate. All three of them used to live together, and when Cecily moved out, Aaron moved out with her. And when Vanessa saw the picture of Cecily on his phone, according to Cecily, Aaron was worried. He was having an affair with a married woman, a violation of the Army's rules under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. If Vanessa recognized Cecily on Aaron's phone, she could report him. If that happened, he could face serious consequences. So Aaron Robinson decided that he was not going to let that happen. He grabbed a hammer and he used that with as much force as he could until Vanessa was gone. 20 years old, at her place of work, the Army base, surrounded by everything that she had dedicated her entire life to for the United States Army. Aaron put her body in the tough box, loaded it into his car, drove to Cecily, told her what he had just done, and then the two of them talked about how to dispose of a body. They drove to an area near a river about 20 miles away from Fort Hood, where they separated her into pieces, making her easier to dispose of. They set a fire and buried what was left of her in 3 separate shallow graves, and then they covered the remains with concrete, hoping that Vanessa's body would not be found for several years. 2 months and 8 days. For 2 months and 8 days, their plan worked. For 2 months and 8 days, Vanessa's family had no idea where their daughter was, if she was okay, if she was not, or why the Army seemed so unwilling to help them out. After she confessed, investigators made her call Aaron right in front of them, and she did, and she said, quote, "Baby, they found the pieces," end quote. In the early hours of July 1st, 2000, law enforcement located Aaron Robinson. As officers moved in to arrest him, he pulled out of and he unalived himself. And just like that, he didn't face any consequences for anything that he did. Cecily Aguilar was arrested and charged. She was sentenced to 30 years in prison. In 2021, Vanessa's name became a law. The I Am Vanessa Guillen Act changed the rules that had failed her. No longer would a soldier who had been have to report it to their own commander, someone who might be friends with the perpetrator, someone who cared more about the unit's reputation more than the victim's safety. Now, for the first time, service members could take their reports outside of their chain of command to independent investigators. It was the protection that Vanessa never got, but future soldiers would have it because of her. Yeah, I really have no words. The braveness and strength of that family is unlike anything I've seen before. I could cry for her sisters. It's so terrible. That is all I have for today. If you made it to the end, thank you. And thank you for listening to Vanessa's story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
My dad got me pregnant. I'm going to preface for anybody that's new here, this is not my story. This is just a summary of a story that I watched last night on YouTube on the channel Other People's Lives. And I also want to say this. I only was able to watch this once. I watched it once, I turned it off, I went to bed, okay? If you want the full, detailed version, please go to YouTube, go to the channel Other People's Lives, and watch it there. I was not able to try and watch it twice so I could, really soak in everything. I feel like I retained what was important and I moved on. I also want to say that if you are somebody that's going to get in my comment section and you're going to complain that I am doing my makeup and telling this story, you picked the wrong comment section. Okay, I don't care. There's no reason why you should be offended over that. I know that all of a sudden we're getting offended over stuff like that now. But I'm getting ready for work, and it would be no different than if I heard this story last night and then FaceTimed like my best friends and told them about it as I was getting ready for work, because it's the only time of the day that I have. Okay, so let's get started. So our caller starts off with how all of this started, how, everything with her father kind of unfolded. So she started with her, being a young age, and it was small things that now as an adult she's noticing wasn't small at all. Like being a young child and her father playing porn on the TV out in the open. I can't remember if she said that her siblings were also in the room or like in the area when he was doing that, but she definitely said that she was. And at times she would even be sitting on the couch and he is just outright playing porn on the TV. All right, so first of all, that's weird. I've noticed in a lot of cases that when it is a parent on child, which sounds, it's disgusting to say out loud, a lot of the times that's how it starts, is it will start with showing the child, the victim, pornography, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to desensitize children to sex, to sexual acts. So then when they try to, do the same things, the kid may not think that it's wrong, or it may not register in that child's brain that something is not right with what is happening to me. What's worse is her mother knew that he was doing this, like knew that he was watching porn out in the open with his child watching it too. And she didn't really do anything about it. So it escalated to her dad asking her to massage his shoulders and then massage his legs, and then it obviously evolved into her massaging areas that no child should be touching on an adult, period. Then as these situations progress, which they normally do, her dad ended up calling her into the kitchen one night, and it was just those two. They were alone, and he sat her on the counter, and there was Vaseline next to her, and you can put the pieces together there of what happened in that situation. Once her dad was fully comfortable molesting her and he was aware that she was not going to say anything, because he would basically threaten her by telling her, you can tell somebody, but if you do, then none of the bills are going to get paid. You and your siblings are going to go into foster care, and your mom's going to be homeless because she doesn't pay any bills. I pay all the bills. So of course he scared her into not saying anything, because she specifically said, she doesn't want her mom to be homeless. She doesn't want her siblings to be, put in foster care. She didn't want everybody to be upset with her. So as he got more comfortable, this became what she said, a once a week occurrence. And he started sneaking into her bedroom saying that, he's going to tuck her in, put her to bed, whatever. And it would always start with him getting into her bed late at night, porn playing on his phone, and he would tell her, this is what I want you to do to me. And he did that to her at least once a week. And she said that the only time that she ever got a break was when he would go back to Africa for a couple of months. She said then she would get maybe at most 6 months worth of a break from that. And then once he came home, it would start all over again. You're not going to convince me that her mother did not know. Even she made a couple comments that she, again, now as an adult, that she's sitting and remembering back of that time, that her mom did know. There's no way that she didn't. Mother's intuition is a very strong thing. And this is what I say about almost all of the cases that I watch with molestation, is if there is a mother in that home, you're not going to convince me that they don't know, that these mothers don't know that all of a sudden the man that they've been married to for however long is all of a sudden acting strange, their child is acting strange, they're showing favoritism towards one child, so on and so forth. So you're not going to convince me that her mom didn't know. And just like last night, I might have to get up a couple times because I got so heated listening to this story and just knowing that there was another parent in the household that more than likely knew and didn't say anything because she wanted the bills to get paid. Her dad was the breadwinner. I believe that's what she said. And after years of dealing with this abuse, she ran away. She said that one day she just had had enough. She blocked her family and ran away. And the same night that she ran away was the same night that she went to a party with her boyfriend and her friends. And she got drunk and spilled everything. She told them everything that was going on. So, of course, the second that she did that was the second that the police got called. The police immediately start investigating, and in cases like this, once they start an investigation where there is molestation or anything like that involved with somebody in the household, they tell that person that they cannot be in the household until the investigation is finished. So they told her dad that he has to find somewhere else to go. He cannot be physically in that house. But where the dad found a loophole was that they said he couldn't be in the house. They didn't say that he couldn't park his car at the end of the driveway every single day and just watch and surveil. So the whole time that the caller is supposed to be feeling safe, like something is going to happen, like this is going to stop, she's having to deal with the fact that her dad is still parked right outside the house at the end of the driveway, watching everything. She also mentioned that, and this is going to piss me off even worse. She mentioned that pretty much the whole time this investigation was originally going on, like the first time that dad was being investigated, it was like her mother was punishing her. And it was almost like she was blaming her for it because she was tearing up the family. Like, that is what her mom was treating her like. That is the things that her mom was saying to her. And one thing that I can't remember from listening to this is I cannot remember if her mother ever explicitly said that she was lying. She just told her that she's ruining the family. The caller also stated that she had to watch as her mom and her siblings went outside every day, walked out to her dad's car, and basically, had a full powwow. Like, nothing was happening. They all walked out to his car and they would talk to him for like an hour or hours, just like kiki, haha, like nothing was actually happening. They were updating him about how their days went. It would be no different than if they walked in and sat at the dinner table with him and were talking with him. And she had to watch that. After everything that had come out, she had to watch them do that with the perpetrator, with the person that had traumatized her for so long. And then her father did go to jail. He was arrested, right? She said that the only family members that actually told her that they believed her and they supported her bailed him out of jail. So now let's talk about her becoming pregnant with her father's baby. She obviously knew that there was something going on in her body. If that is one thing that women are good with, is just discernment and when there is something not normal going on inside of their bodies, right? So I say that because not only did she, the caller, kind of recognize that there was something weird going on in her body, but her mother also was kind of starting to assume that she was pregnant. Again, I am so glad that they keep these people confidential because I want to know who that mom is so bad, and I am keeping the things that I want to say to myself. But her mom kind of started understanding that her daughter was pregnant, and there's a 90% chance that it is her husband that got their daughter pregnant. And the caller got a DNA test because it was two options. It's either her boyfriend or her dad, and come to find out, the baby has her dad's DNA. That is her dad's baby. And then the police got involved again, and the dad was arrested again. Throughout all this, the caller had her baby and immediately put the baby up for a closed adoption. And I think that that was 100% the right thing to do, because she does not need to relive that trauma every day. And that baby needs to grow up not being exposed to how it was made. And again, I just think that she did the right thing. Her dad, mind you, escaped jail and ran off to Africa. He went to Africa, which she said, really, she had already kind of removed him from her life mentally, no matter what, right? But she found out that he had escaped and went to Africa because his PO or his CO called her to inform her of that. And she started receiving photos from her siblings in Africa, because she has siblings in Africa as well. They were sending her photos of them with her dad. And I want to go ahead and say this because she also said this. She does not believe that her siblings in Africa knew about this. I highly doubt that her dad went to Africa with his other kids and other family and let them know, like, hey, I just escaped prison and it's because I molested your sister back in America and now I'm here. Hello. Like, I don't think that he said that. I think that her siblings were just sending her photos, almost like, it was just letting her know, like, hey, dad's here, and they had no idea that they were re-traumatizing her over and over. And she did not tell them that because she was trying to move on. And that is one thing that I want to say, because now I'm just going to kind of like give my thoughts, really. The caller, the person, the victim, she is one of the strongest people I have ever known. And I don't know her, but it's the fact that she is telling this story. She is not stuttering. She is not, like, her voice isn't even breaking. She is saying this story like, this happened to me. This was the outcome and I moved on. And what really broke my heart is that I cannot remember when this video was posted, but I know when this video was posted, she was 22 years old telling this story. And my youngest sister is 22. And I know, and I'm not trying to make this about myself, but I know that when I was raped by somebody, and then some people that I trusted, and I didn't even know them that well. I just was naive and I trusted people that I shouldn't have. That does not excuse what happened to me, but I'm just saying, I could not imagine, because it took me years to get over that PTSD. It took me years to not wake up in the middle of the night with sweats and crying and, being afraid that I was going to run into those people everywhere that I went. I could not imagine me being a victim to my own father and like trying to move on from that. She is one of the strongest people that I know, and anybody that goes through this type of scenario, because unfortunately this is not an uncommon thing to happen. They are the strongest people that I know, and I don't know them, but you know what I mean. And the caller, I truly hope that she is getting the absolute best out of life. I hope that she is, able to cope well, and that she is, moving on. I know that that's going to be so hard to move on from, and she probably never will be able to move on from that. But I really do hope that she is just living the best life and she's getting the best that life could possibly offer her. And I do hope the same for that baby, that that child never figures out how it was made. And, it's living a normal life away from all of this chaos, just like the caller. And that mother is disgusting. I really think for some reason the mother not standing up for her child is really what made me the most angry. And I don't care if you think that that's not the thing that I should be the most angry over. It is, because as a mother, you should protect your child at all costs. Even if he was threatening your life, if you were to go tell the police, my life is on the line then. I'm going to give up my life for my child. I don't even have children, but I know that when it comes to their life or mine, it will be theirs every single time. I will always choose my children over me and their safety over mine. period. So the fact that her mother didn't do that, she belongs 6 feet under the jail. There's a lot worse things that I want to say, but I'm trying really hard not to. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and go. I hope that you guys have a great day. And of course, I want to know what you think about this story in the comments. Again, if you want to watch the full story, go to Other People's Lives on YouTube and watch it there. And I love you. Bye.
I feel like with a lot of true crime cases, or I guess true crime in general, it's often just seen as entertainment. But the reason as to why I do these videos in the first place is because I hope to remind you that these cases are real. These things happen to real people. The families are real. The grief is real. The people mourning a loss is real. And you never think that it could happen to you until it does. And today's story especially is one of those for me that just serves as a reminder that sometimes it really is just being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Lauren Burke was an 18-year-old freshman at Auburn University when she was kidnapped and taken from her own car. Her life was cut short at the hands of a truly sick and twisted man. Let's talk about it. Lauren Ashley Burke was born in Marietta, Georgia to her parents James and Vivian. She grew up in a suburb north of Atlanta in Cobb County, and she's been described by anyone who knew her as a bright, vivacious young woman whose smile lit up a room. She was one of 3 kids. She had a brother and a sister. And despite her parents' divorce when she was still young, Lauren maintained a very close relationship with both her mother and her father, who co-parented very well. And their family kept a close and tight, healthy relationship. Lauren attended Walton High School, and there she had a reputation as someone who would go out of her way to help others, and she was able to make friends very easily. Quote, she had many friends and was accepting of everyone. For those of us who were fortunate to know Lauren, we were blessed. Those words were said by a school counselor of hers. After graduating high school in 2007, Lauren enrolled in Auburn University in Auburn, Alabama. She chose Auburn because she wanted to pursue this passion that she had for the arts. She had big dreams to build a career on photography, and she wanted to major in graphic design and art. So off she went to Alabama, and when she got there, she threw herself into the college life, ready and excited for this new chapter in her life. She joined Delta Gamma during her freshman year, a sorority. She also joined Auburn's lacrosse team, continuing the sport that she once loved in high school, and she also got involved in an organization called Invisible Child, which supports starving children in Africa, very much demonstrating her desire and her want to make a difference in the world, a positive difference. But even though she was having fun, making new friends, enjoying college, she still managed to set enough time aside to be able to make calls home frequently. And she would often call her dad and just talk about her life, her plans, her classes, how everything was going. And by early 2008, she was thriving, truly. She was living in an off-campus apartment. She had a boyfriend, Sean McQuaid, who she had actually been dating in high school. They were high school sweethearts. All of Lauren's family adored Sean because he was so good for and to Lauren. They both cared about each other very deeply, and that was obvious. She was in the middle of making plans for her spring break with her friends. She was only 18 years old, but she really had her whole life ahead of her, and she was so excited about everything that was to come. But on the night of March 4th of 2008, everything would change in an instant. March 4th was a Tuesday, and around 9 p.m. that night, 911 received a phone call. The caller was calling to report an injured young woman lying in the middle of the road. She was wearing only socks, crying and gasping for air, very desperate for help. She was waving her arms, trying to get someone's attention to come and help her. First responders arrived to the scene at 9:12 p.m., and when they got there, they found the girl lying on the ground. She was unconscious, hardly breathing, with injuries all over her. It looked almost as if she had been thrown or pushed out of a moving vehicle because of the amount of scratches and cuts that she had all over her. When paramedics rushed over to her, they found a very faint pulse, and she was immediately rushed to the nearest hospital. That girl was 18-year-old Lauren Burke. At the same time, while Lauren was in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, other 911 calls began coming in, but this time they were coming from Auburn University on campus. Multiple people were calling to report a vehicle that was parked in a parking lot up in flames. Fire and police units were dispatched immediately, and they found Lauren's black 2001 Honda Civic engulfed in flames. Officers ran the license plate, and they saw that that car was registered to James Burke in Georgia, Lauren's father, so they called him to let him know. Lauren's dad was so confused, worried, sick. He had no idea as to why, one, the car would be on fire, and no idea as to where Lauren was or if she was okay. Naturally, then James tried to frantically call his daughter, obviously having no idea about the state that she had just been found in and that she was in an ambulance on her way to the hospital, and obviously he couldn't reach her. And then approximately only 1 hour after arriving at the hospital, around 10:35 p.m., 18-year-old Lauren Burke was pronounced deceased from a single wound that had punctured both of her lungs. James Burke arrived at the hospital shortly after because after finding Lauren's car in that state and not hearing from her, authorities had advised him to make the drive to Auburn. And when he got there, he got the news that his daughter had just passed. It's one of those situations where you get a phone call that worries you so much, but you don't want to assume the worst, but then you get there and you are given the worst news imaginable and your entire world just pauses. I can't even imagine what he must have felt in that moment, and then having to make the phone call to his ex-wife, Lauren's mom, and her siblings. It's heartbreaking. But on top of that, it's also incredibly incredibly confusing because by all accounts, Lauren lived a very happy life with good friends, a good boyfriend, and amazing family, so how did she end up deceased on what felt like a random Tuesday? It made no sense to anyone. The investigation into Lauren's case began that same night immediately after investigators quickly realized that the car that had been found was directly connected to Lauren. It could not have been a coincidence that her car was found in that state shortly after she was found. They needed to figure out what happened. A man called Tommy Dawson was serving as assistant police chief at the time, and this is a quote from him, quote, March 4th of 2008. It was a cool night from March standards even. I was home about 9 to 9:30. I got a call. The young lady had been found lying in the middle of the road on I-47. I responded out there, found out what we had, and the chief registered at the time, our captain, took over the scene. I went over to the hospital to check on the young lady, and when I got there, I found out that she had been pronounced deceased. I met her dad at exit 58, took him over to identify her remains. One of the hardest things that I've ever gone through. I still can see Lauren there lying in the East Alabama Medical Center, lifeless. Investigators quickly began processing both crime scenes. At the highway where Lauren was first found, they collected evidence, tire tracks, and road evidence, as well as witness statements from motorists who had stopped by to help. At the parking lot on campus where the car was found, they conducted a forensic examination of the vehicle and collected Lauren's belongings that were still inside of the car, her clothing, some cash, and a digital camera, but her credit card seemed to be missing. 2 witnesses came forward and stated that when they first saw Lauren lying on the side of the road, as they turned their cars around to go over and help her, they saw a dark-colored Honda Civic speeding off toward the direction of campus. Lauren's car was a black Honda Civic, so it slowly started to sound like shortly after Lauren was left on the side of the road by whoever had her car was being driven to campus and then set on fire. And investigators assumed that the reason as to why the car was probably set on fire was in hopes of destroying any and all evidence left inside of there. So very quickly, pretty much from the start, this looked like a homicide, and it was feeling like Lauren had probably been abducted or taken or pushed or forced into her own car against her will. They knew that she was forced to remove her clothing because she was found wearing only socks, and they felt like she tried to escape because the road rash and the injuries that she had suggested that she jumped from a moving vehicle, and the person who did this attempted to then destroy the evidence by leaving that car in the parking lot. But who would do such a thing? By talking to Lauren's friends, investigators began putting together a timeline of what her day must have looked like on March 4th. In the morning, she got breakfast with her boyfriend before going to class at 11 a.m. After class, she then talked to her dad on the phone, then she went over to her boyfriend's dorm and took a nap. After that, she left in her own car because she had plans to meet up with a friend at a library to study at around 8:30 p.m. But Lauren never made it to the library. The friend that she was supposed to meet told authorities that she talked to Lauren on the phone just before, and all Lauren said was that she had completely forgotten about their plans, and then she quickly, abruptly hung up the call, which was really strange. Investigators got their first major lead in the case when Lauren's stolen credit card was being used. Remember, I said her credit card was not found in her car with the rest of her belongings. Well, that's because it was taken. At 9:17 p.m., just after Lauren was left on the highway, her credit card was used at a gas station on North College Street in Auburn to purchase $14 worth of gasoline. Less than 24 hours later, it was used then again in Atlanta, Georgia to buy more gas, and then the morning after it was used at a Kroger. And using surveillance camera footage, investigators were able to see that it was a man using Lauren's car. They worked to enhance the image of the CCTV footage, but it was still very, very hard to see a face, and they needed help identifying the man in the footage. The FBI then got involved because the perpetrator had crossed state lines from Alabama to Georgia while using the stolen credit card. And then came March 7th of 2008. A 23-year-old man was pulled over in Georgia for speeding. He was pulled over, asked to get out of the car, when all of a sudden, he pushed past the officer, got back inside of his car, and attempted to flee the scene, speeding off in his car. That started a high-speed chase, in which then the guy jumped out of his car and began fleeing on foot. A group of officers chased him down into a wooded area where they eventually got him and they put him in handcuffs. That guy was 23-year-old Courtney Lockhart, an Army veteran, and he had quite the lengthy criminal history. When Courtney was taken into custody for trying to run away from the officers after he was pulled over for speeding, they realized that this guy was wanted for questioning in multiple robberies across Alabama and Georgia. But not only that, he also happened to match the description of the man seen in surveillance footage using Lauren's stolen credit card. And because he was not only in Alabama but also in Georgia, they had reason to believe that he could be directly connected to Lauren's case, and it was only confirmed to them that they were on the right track when they found physical evidence to prove so. When officers searched Courtney's car, they found Lauren's iPod directly connecting him him to the murder and signs of a weapon matching the description of what they thought could have been Lauren's murder weapon, as well as other stolen items linking him to multiple robberies. Come to find out, Courtney also had a history of being quite violent against women and also had a history of robbing women and ambushing them in parking lots. When he was confronted with this overwhelming amount of evidence against him, Auburn police officers pressed him about Lauren's murder. Initially, he said that he knew nothing about it, but then on March 8th of 2008, Courtney Lockhart gave a full confession. When he confessed, he described himself as a man whose life had completely and totally fallen apart, saying that he was essentially homeless and that he had been sleeping inside of his car in different parking lots. On March 3rd, he told authorities that he had been sleeping in his car at East Alabama Medical Center and was supposed to go to a job site, but said that that was canceled and he didn't have enough gas money to drive back home. So on March 4th, he had been driving around aimlessly with nowhere to go. Courtney told investigators that he ended up at Auburn University's campus and parked in a lot near Hinton Field behind the dorms. He deliberately backed into the parking space to hide his license plate, and then he just sat there and watched students go about their day. At around 8 p.m., he said that he saw Lauren walking towards her car and he approached her and her vehicle. He went up behind her, pulled out his weapon, and pointed it at her. Lauren backed up into the passenger seat. Courtney got in the driver's seat and drove away with one hand on the wheel and the other hand holding the weapon pointed at her. As soon as they left campus, Lauren handed him everything that she had, $200 in cash, and she was pleading for him to either leave or to let her leave, but he didn't leave. He instead ordered her to remove her clothing. According to him, his reasoning for doing so was so that she wouldn't try to run away or, quote, wouldn't do anything or make any crazy moves, end quote. For 30 minutes, they drove around. The entire time, Lauren was terrified, but somehow, some way, she still managed to show him compassion. Courtney was telling her all about how his life was a mess, and Lauren was trying to help him, saying that she knew someone who could help get him a job, but Courtney was just getting progressively angrier and angrier. As they kept driving around, Lauren's phone then started ringing. Her boyfriend was calling to check up on her, and then her friend, who she was supposed to meet at 8:30 p.m. at the library, then also called her. Courtney allowed her to answer her phone when her friend was calling, but then he forced her to lie, claiming that she had, quote, forgotten about the study session. So remember, her friend mentioned to authorities that she had spoken to Lauren on the phone, but Lauren just said that she forgot about the plans and then abruptly hung up the call. During that time, she was in her car with Courtney with a weapon being pointed to her face, which is so sad and so scary to think about. Obviously, her friend had no idea. Lauren kept trying to talk to Courtney, trying to plead for her life, offering him help for work, and literally showing him humanity, even though he showed her zero, but nothing worked. As they kept driving down Highway 147, Lauren made a split-second decision. She opened up the passenger door and she jumped out of the moving vehicle, and that's when Courtney used his weapon just inches away from her body, piercing both of her lungs. He fell to the ground and Courtney then drove away, leaving her on the roadside wearing only her socks. Then he ditched her car, fled, and continued using Lauren's credit card in Atlanta and Georgia before throwing it out of his window. Over the next 3 days, he robbed 3 more women, and those 3 robberies included him pointing his weapon at a 3-year-old child and attacking a 72-year-old woman, and then he was found speeding, he was pulled over, and we know what happened after that. Following his confession, Courtney Lockhart was formally charged with capital murder, kidnapping, robbery, and attempted, but he was later acquitted of the charge at trial. The case attracted massive national attention, and his defense attorneys filed multiple motions for a change in venue, arguing that the extensive media coverage had made a fair trial impossible. His trial officially began November 8th of 2010, approximately 2.5 years after Lauren's murder. It lasted a total of 9 days, and his defense team tried their best to argue that he wasn't in the right state of mind, that he didn't know what he was doing because he had suffered from PTSD after serving 16 months in the army. Courtney himself remained completely quiet throughout the entire thing, showing no emotion. And on November 18th of 2010, after hours of deliberation, the jury found him guilty and recommended life in prison without the possibility of parole. And then in March of 2011, the judge overruled the jury's unanimous recommendation and sentenced Courtney Lockhart to death, stating that he had a clear pattern of escalating violence. He was then sent to Holman Correctional Facility in Alabama, where he remains on death row today. Ended a poor girl's life and ruined so many people's lives. For what? And I, of course, want to end this video by remembering Lauren, actually from a quote from the former Chief Dawson. Remember, he served as Auburn Police Chief from 2010 to 2013 and got to meet Lauren's family. In 2021, during an Auburn City Council meeting, he stated the following. This quote makes me cry. He said, quote, I'd like to ask each one of you to say a prayer this coming Friday, March the 4th. Back in 2008, we lost Mrs. Lauren Burke on March the 4th. I'll never forget it, and I ask none of you ever forget it. I promised her that her death would never be in vain. We will never forget her. We have not forgotten her, Mr. Burke. She's constantly on my mind and in my heart. And if any young ladies are listening to this council meeting tonight, think of Lauren. You always think it can't happen to you, but it can happen to you. Take the extra precautions, and if you feel at the least uneasy about something, just something doesn't feel right to you, call the Auburn Police Division. We'll be glad to walk you to your car. I say we, Chief Anderson and his folks now, would be glad to walk you to the car. It's hard to get away from saying we, but we deeply care about our students, especially our young ladies. For all of us that have daughters, you know what I'm talking about. It's a tough thing to let your daughter go, so just please be careful out there. If anyone that hears this can spread my message, it can happen to you when you don't think that it can. And to Mr. Burke, again, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. I know it never gets easier, and prayers are still with you, my friend. It's so sad. I couldn't think of a more fitting message to end this video with rather than that quote. So that is all from me today. Thank you guys for sticking around. Thank you for listening to Lauren's story. And I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy. And I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.